And now we're going to take you live to the U.S. We're getting reports out of Texas as a breaking story developing on the minute that there's been a shooting at a church about 30 miles southeast of San Antonio. Now we see that's a report. There's at least confirmed 27 dead, 24 injured in that church. It's the First Baptist Church in Texas, southeast of Houston. We have multiple casualties reported, 27 dead as of now. This is just breaking as we're bringing it to you. We know very little. We know that the attacker has apparently been shot dead at the scene. The shooter was reportedly killed. The shooting took place at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs. That's the name of the town, Sutherland Springs. You can see we are bringing you live images. That's the church below. Witnesses say a man walked into a church and there were multiple rounds, about 20-30 shots heard from outside the church as the church session was underway. Okay, we have our correspondent ready to try to help us try to get more on the story. Colin Campbell joining us out of Washington. Hello, Colin, what more can you tell us at this point?
Well, what we know so far is that a gunman entered the church around 11:30 local time and fired multiple shots. We're unclear of how many victims there are so far, but police have pushed the scene back, and they're trying to keep everyone a safe distance away from the church as they try to evacuate most of the parishioners inside of that church. Now, this gunman entered, and some people said that he arrived already shooting. Others said that he waited until he was inside the church, until they knew that there was a service going on before those shots were fired. Some of the records and some of the documents and testimonies coming from witnesses have already been shared with the FBI as they are trying to lay out exactly how this scene started and what exactly happened as the gunman went through the church indiscriminately firing multiple shots. Again, we're not exactly sure how many victims there are, but they are pushing the scene back. They're trying to secure the area. And remember, this comes just days after another shooting in Walmart in Colorado, where a very Christian person said to have Bibles in his room fired shots inside of a Walmart. And of course, we had the shooting just a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas, a mass shooting where there were more than 55 victims and hundreds of others injured as the gunman opened fire at a concert, a country music concert, and almost 60 people were killed. It's one of the worst mass shootings in recent U.S. history, not in throughout U.S. history total, but in recent years. And so many people are wondering what is going to happen next for lawmakers to try to make a decision as far as it comes to gun control and trying to regulate some of these firearms that seem to take too many lives too soon, too quickly.
And this has eerily reminds us of that the Charleston church massacre. If you remember, mid-2015, around June or July, I think it was, a young man went into that the African American church there in Charleston, South Carolina, gunning down people that were in during church proceedings. Do you remember that?
Yes, that's right. Of course, I remember that. That took place in Charleston, and that, of course, took place in June of 2017. Dylan Roof, who was sentenced to death, he's the perpetrator of that, where he killed 9 people, and a very well-known pastor in that area. He waited when they stopped praying together to open fire. He actually sat through a service, a prayer circle, I believe, and then he opened fire on those congregants, killing 9 people, I believe. He was known to be a white nationalist and a sympathizer for very, I wouldn't say supremacist thought, but very nationalist and very right-leaning and very aggressive and very extremist mentality. So this was something that, again, does give us memories of that. But of course, many people are thinking of just some of the recent shootings where lots of people have been killed. Of course, we do remember last year at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida, where about 50 people were killed in that shooting as well, where a gunman opened fire in that club, and that had to be shut down. And for several days, people were trying to figure out what the motive was behind this shooting. So this seems to be obviously an ongoing problem in the U.S., as many people wonder, what are lawmakers going to do? What is it going to take for them to take action? And again, We have already seen the statistics
I
of
mean,
the increase of gun violence in the U.S. since these shootings have occurred over the past several years, and nothing is really being done about it.
Colin, what can really be done? After Sandy Hook, when we saw a couple dozen small children get slaughtered behind, and then that didn't lead to any kind of gun control. Then that really kind of sums it up that the gun control lobby, how much power it has, what kind of grip, choking grip it has on lawmakers.
It really does it's very demonstrative of the power and authority that the National Rifle Association has on lawmakers and the political will that they choose not to engage in order to try to do anything about gun control. The part that I think a lot of Americans are frustrated over is not the fact that they are calling or not calling for gun control or trying to take away guns or limiting guns. It's the fact that there is so much inaction all the way around when it comes to background checks, regulation, selling guns across state lines, looking at the straw man purchases. There are lots of things that lawmakers could do to at least suppress, decrease the amount of gun violence happening in the country, but there is a lot of inactivity. Even when it comes to legislation that's trying to track how much gun violence occurs in the U.S. The CDC has tried to implement some policies that would track the number of deaths and the number of people killed by gun violence when it comes to local civilians, when it comes to the police force, and even then there is a lack of political will to even enforce these policies or even try to initiate these policies. So again, yes, when you look at Sandy Hook and you think dozens of children massacred, teachers massacred, and nothing has been done, it makes one wonder, what would it take? Would it take a widespread increase of gun violence every week for something to happen? No one really knows. But we do have a very frustrated American public and, of course, a very scared and nervous American public.
Thanks for joining us, Colin. We're going to let this develop for a few minutes. We know very little about it, but just to let you know, Colin, we got reports into 27 dead, 24 injured right now. This is the latest out of that Texas church shooting. That was on Press TV's Colin Campbell, everyone, joining us out of Washington, D.C. Those are live images coming out of Sutherland Springs. That's about 30 miles southeast of the city of San Antonio, state of Texas. There's been a church shooting. A man has walked into a church and gunned down well over 2 dozen people, another couple dozen injured. That's all we know. We don't know who he is or what his motive may be. As soon as we get this developed for you, we'll get it out to you accordingly later in the program.